Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings here on Earth. Okay, we'll do that. Yeah, what is Earth doing? Anyway, yeah, there's nothing good to report. Idiocracy is, currently winning. Imbeciles are everywhere. People aren't all that smart. They don't know very much about reality. They have lots of silly notions in their head. And, not good. So anyway, this is the third article that somebody linked me to, and said, do videos on this crap. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, why not? I still have a temperature issue with the GPU. It's already 103, which is not good. This video might have some failure in it. We'll have to see how it goes. Anyway, I mean, you can just start with the, antinatalism. So this is, I don't know what this is. Put a num on it. Some stupid frickin' blog of some kind with, who even thinks up this crap? Sorry. It's, whether I'm gapped or, well, I guess I was always gapped because nothing ever made much sense. I mean, groovy wasn't even groovy when people were saying groovy. It was like, a what? No, that's not cool. Anyway, so, whatever. That's the subjective crap that we gotta tread through. That underlies the whole conversation is all this subjective taste thing. You say tomato, I say whatever, tomato kind of bullshit. And, that psychology prevents so much capacity to communicate with each other because we just trigger each other's, oh, that wasn't cool, oh, that's stupid, just constantly gets in the way of, oh, look, I have an idea in my head, a model running of how you put things together, and it's kind of obvious what it spells. I mean, it's like writing on a big wall, and you can't get it. So anyway, this starts with the does life suck? Question mark. Well, yeah, that's one way of saying it, but of course, if you say life sucks, it's a slangy kind of thing. It's not an articulate explanation. Is life too messy? Well, that's kind of a better way to say it. Is it too sloppy? Is it too inefficient? Does deserve have too little to do with it? Are the penalties for failure way too high? Is the worst of it really bad? Is it a bad game? If we made it into a game and you watched it on TV, is it a good game? Is it a good, hey, this is a really nice competition, it's really fair, the umpires take care of everything, nobody gets hurt? No, that's not what this is. Okay, life is a really, it is the gladiator war. It's a bunch of versions of something competing with each other to prove how much better they are. But we're not even doing that, right? Because the whole procreation reward, the trophy, doesn't have anything to do with making babies. The winners don't do that. The winners don't say to themselves, I want to waste my time raising children. I want to be I want to be a nursery school teacher and then a first grade teacher and a second grade teacher. I want to spend my life, devote a big piece of it to raising kids, whatever the fuck that even entails. I mean, to do it in any kind of, so that's another question. Is raising kids difficult? Is it hard work? So why don't you ask that question? Because obviously to do it right, it's incredibly difficult work, because to do it right, you have to anticipate all of your potential errors. All of those little mistakes that'll just make such a difference. Like letting your kid fall on the sidewalk and, scar its face for life. That kind of stuff. You have to avoid all the crap that's going to really limit the potential of your child. You have to make those decisions like, well, okay, maybe I'm going to force him to stick to playing the violin or stick to one thing and actually do it, to actually know whether he wants to be that or not, because he can't even know if he only spends 5 minutes, and all of that psychology. So you could ask a simple question. I mean, and it just doesn't, it doesn't say nearly enough, and so it's just a tactic. It's just a way of trivializing. So this is mainly what all of these articles involve, is these are very glib people who are very comfortable with the whole idea of imposing on other people, making decisions that will affect others based on their subjective decisions. Like they're just saying, I know what's the best food to feed you, and I know what the best exercise for you to do is, and I will decide for you what your best destiny is. And it's, oh well, if you have to be this, if we have to sacrifice you in a war, so I'm okay with that. I don't mind doing it. I'll dress you in your little uniform and I'll send you out to get your face shot off, because I'm so brave. I mean, it's pathetic that these people can't even come close to getting to some of the root arguments, which are, is imposition something humans should be in the business of? Is it really something that has any practical doability to it in this circumstance where the imposition is not at all certain? Yuck. Again, I could just make the statement. I mean, these people would be comfortable if they had 10 kids and the law was, one of your kids has to die of cancer, just the statistical facts we have to live up to. Obviously nature does it, but we all know it's going to happen. We all know statistically if we say you can breed or you can breed, that means that the retard over there is going to breed, and the retard over there is going to breed, and the asshole over there, and the child molester, they're all going to do it too. So statistically there's going to be an outcome, and the outcome's going to have a certain number of real losers, hard losers. And these people would be okay. They'd actually be okay with it. Like I said, walking up to one of their kids and saying, hey, sorry, you got the short straw, and I'm going to now inject you with cancer. And you're going to spend 2 years dying of leukemia. And I've decided it's worth it, because the other 9 kids aren't going to get leukemia. Oh yeah, they're going to, get fat. They're going to become drug addicts. They're going to become wife beaters. They're going to become all kinds of silly, crappy, shitty stuff. But that's all good. It's for the best. Because that's what life is. It's fun, fun, fun for everyone. Because we don't pay any attention to the fact that people are paying for it. Other people. And that's the trick. Other people are paying. So I just don't know how really brave they would be if they really had to do it. They really had to live with the decisions they're making. Like actually take accountability for their decision and actually have to do. It's like the meat eater who doesn't have the guts to go out and whack the pig in the head, carve him up, Joey, the pig. I mean, it's so hypocritical for them not to be able to say there's something wrong here. It's true. It's wrong. It's just wrong for me to eat it and pretend I had the courage to impose the penalty, because I didn't. And as soon as that's probably another really good reason to become vegetarian as a philosophical position, or vegan, is just recognizing the fact that you're a hypocrite. Because if you had to go out there and twist its little neck and do all that crap, you couldn't do it. You would say, oh, I'd rather adopt him. Can I make a little place in the couch? A little pillow, and So this conversation is so far from being in any context of a reality or the truth. They're all just invested in this absolute bullshit. I mean, again, if we were talking about Martians, life on Mars and the Martian civilization and all that, we'd say, oh, that's just way too difficult. Let's not try to put life on Mars, because it's just too much to organize. It's way too chaotic and messy. It'll take us forever to figure out how to do that right. So yeah, let's not even bother, because why would we? there's no, there are a few people out there. I mean, there's people who talk like it be some kind of bright idea, but they have no argument to make about how it improves the universe or it makes any sense. To make tentacled Martians or something. Like we could model it on a computer first. And there's no way to model it with these rules. Oh, well, deserve will have nothing to do with it. Okay. No, it's just already you're just saying no. You get deserve has to have something to do with it, or it just really can't make any sense. How can any game that's played with real consequences, real winning and real losing, be played without deserve having something to do with it? You wouldn't watch that game. I mean, if they played baseball that way, or football, or soccer, and deserve didn't have anything to do with it, you wouldn't watch it. All right. So, does life suck? I think it does somewhat. Oh, gee, that's kind of ambiguous, isn't it? Others would say it sucks even worse than that. Yeah, well, I guess otherwise, yes, somewhat. I mean, I don't even know what is somewhat. That's the best you can do. Well, anyway, David Benatar thinks that life sucks. So again, this isn't Benatar's philosophy. I mean, playing this game with words, right? I mean, Benatar's obviously articulating a very analytic, rigorous kind of thought process where you recognize that, yeah, it is the fail-safe solution isn't bad. There's no victims in the fail-safe solution. There's nobody goes to jail, nobody gets cancer. There really isn't any profound harm caused by preventing the existence of something. It doesn't go to some bad place. It doesn't go to hell, okay? So it's not stuck in hell. You're not leaving them in some purgatory. You're not abandoning them, in some third world nation or something. It's has no negative that's discernible, and all it lacks is some sort of notion of a positive, whatever that would be. Anyway, David Benatar thinks that life sucks so profoundly that bestowing it on anyone like your child is a grave crime. So they could have just stuck with Benatar thinks it's a grave crime against logic, reason, facts, statistics, all of that stuff to initiate something that has all these known risks involved. That there's absolutely no reason to invent these children. Alright, should be back. So I was sort of saying pushing your kids onto a tightrope of addiction, or addiction to tightrope walking. This risk behavior, and clearly, this is a whole other subject of the whole psychology of people and whether we're running towards life or whether we're running away from death. We're just trying to maintain, and that's, a state, just seeking to eat one more apple, one more this, one more that. I mean, these are things people are, constantly doing, is trying to just up their level, just tread the water well, to keep their little nose above the water. We're not really trying to gain, we're trying to not lose, most of us. I think this is a reasonable argument that most people are just trying to hold on to what they have, and just to gain just any kind of little increase in their state. Take an aspirin, get rid of the headache. Just any kind of improvement, and that's the addiction that drives people. And this isn't a very sophisticated psychological mire that the living being is in terms of just trying to maintain a state of comfort, some level of it. All right. So obviously having this kid is, it's as a grave crime. Again, it's a crime against what? I mean, the important part is what Benatar is saying it's a crime against. which you could just go down the list of all the arguments. It's so impositional, it's so arrogant, it's, you know, it's rolling dice with somebody else's welfare. There's so many analogies to how dangerous this is, that obviously it's a grave crime because it's like reckless endangerment. I mean, there's so many danger flags, and yet you have to ignore all of that to have a child. You have to be totally indifferent to the real prospects of real outcomes that are really, really bad. And if you give them any consideration, they will stifle you. Okay, and that's, I think, just another truth. That if you really think about all the negative potential, yeah, it's enough to stop. It's enough to prevent you from going anywhere near it. It's such a dangerous bomb. But anyway, the antinatalist philosopher, so obviously it's kind of a silly way to describe somebody, but anyway, is having a moment. So he's using the more little, you know, patronizing gibberish about the fact that, you know, Benatar gained a little bit of popularity and he became a interesting interview. A profile in the New Yorker, an appearance on the Sam Harris podcast, and a reader emailing to ask me what I think of the case against being born. So yeah, so whoever this guy is, you know. But anyway, these arguments are just, they're so bad in the sense that they don't pay any attention to any of the real implications of existence, the whole idea that every decision you make has implications on other people, that you do in fact change the world, and all of that carries with it something for which you should be highly sensitive to your responsibilities. And it's just more nihilist crap where he's just going to argue from a selfish asshole position of I'll do whatever the fuck I want, and the capitalists tell me that makes the world a good place. If I'm a selfish cunt, it all works out okay. I mean, it's that kind of stupid philosophy. They're just really, really stupid. Anyway, I tried to make sense of antinatalism. I don't think it tried, so I won't go into I think that's just a lie. And I think it's bad philosophy. So there's obviously nothing bad in the philosophy in the sense it's focused on something good, which is let's not make a mess. First do no harm. It's recognizing that there are, that this isn't working just fine, and that everything is okay and everything's just great, and we don't need to do anything at all. I mean, it's clearly saying the solution, the cure, is rather radical, but it's making a rational argument for the cure, okay, and not perpetuating the disease, okay. It's saying we're better off, paying whatever price the cure involves than we are doing anything less than the cure. Okay. But I also think it's bad economics. So this is just almost too silly for words. So this is one of these people who thinks that all the gains we've made in technological gains and everything else are completely dependent on increased, population. And if you don't have increased population, you don't have any of those potentialities, and you never get anywhere. Now, the truth is, you'd probably get to the future a little bit slower if you don't have slavery, and you don't have exploitation, and you don't have all those negative things that grind people into the dirt. And so if you do it in a civilized way, it probably takes you a little longer. But let's understand, lots of isolated civilizations did lots of advancing in the world. Okay. You could even say Easter Island, might be an example of how all that is crap, because in a sense it was overpopulation. Was one of the key explanations for what destroyed them. But also you could understand that they didn't need to gain in numbers to be able to acquire technology and improve lives. So the acquisition of technology just requires you to have leisure time, and any tiny little group of humans anywhere can do that. I mean, the cave people did it, lots of people did it, And it wasn't because they were growing exponentially. It's because they had a routine, and the routine created time for them to paint on walls and do other things. So anyway, try other things. So the efficiency is, there's no rule that says it's more efficient to create surplus labor and exploitable people. No, there's no rule that says you have to do it that way. And there's, certainly no rule that says the fact that you're walking up a staircase of acquiring knowledge, that is, you're investigating the world little pieces at a time, piece by piece, that's what the human race has been doing, that somehow you need to have excess population to walk up that staircase. Of course you're going to walk up the technical staircase regardless. It's not going to, you don't, surplus population or declining population, that's just the nature of human beings, is to acquire more knowledge. If you can get more knowledge, if you can live longer, you can have more time to do science, then you're going to figure things out. And every civilization that's ever existed on planet Earth has done that to some extent, more or less. And they all have advanced from some previous state. They all find out how to make sharper arrows, or do something better to make improvements. And so all of the gains we have made in terms of quality of life are all gains that were inevitable. And you're really just saying, is slavery an acceptable way to jump to the future a little quicker? And I would argue, of course, it's not. But anyway, so to bring up economics is just it's such a trivial, silly argument. And again, it's not even, it doesn't have anything to do with any kind of rational economics. It just has to do with the economics of the exploitanist, who thinks, it's not a big deal to have slaves. It's not a big deal to annihilate the quality of life for a huge number of people, so a few privileged people can, talk about their horrors on the golf course and such. Bullshit. All right. But it's also bad economic. It plays on the widely held intuition. So again, the intuition word is just a generic word now for stupid notion. When what it really should be is the less than thoughtful. Okay, you could say less than thoughtful. The wildly held less than thoughtful belief that an extra person makes the rest of humanity worse off. So somehow he thinks that's intuition, when it seems exactly the opposite. People don't seem to have any rational intuition about sustainable population, and understanding that surpluses of any labor element of any kind of population is dangerous, because the surpluses will be not taken care of. And so makes worse off by taking up some space, some resources, and some piece of the pie that would have gone to others. Clearly, it's all pressure on a system. So the simple argument is, if 10 works, why don't you just stay at 10? I mean, why add 11, 12, 15, 20? There's no benefit overtly. And the only benefit could be is if you're arguing that somehow you're just not advancing fast enough because you don't have enough people to study the future. So you can't get to the future fast enough because you're not evolving. Not going through enough transitions of human minds. Spending time working on the problem. Now, of course, that's true. Like I said, you can get to the future faster with more people, but the inefficiencies of that system of sloppy, causes a lot of grief that you're not taking any account for. So again, it's more kids injected with cancer that you're not injecting, that you don't have the courage to say, I'll decide for them. I'll say the victims are okay. It's okay to make these victims. You'll have the courage to impose the bad news. And I don't think any of you bold talkers with other people's welfare would ever have the courage to do any of that crap. Anyway, I hold that this zero-sum view is ignorant of the reality of the modern economy. So the modern economy has nothing to do with the economy. The economy is something that was in the past and the present and the future. It's not some sort of modern economy. Now, the fact that the modern economy has a bunch of unsustainable, retarded systems in it that where basically exploitation is required to maintain the economy, because it's been built on slavery, essentially, when it's built on surplus labor, when it's built on a whole bunch of things that are negative, it's built on, the factual fact is the modern economy is working worse than the king economy. The economy of lords and kings and nobles who inherited everything. That economy, okay, spread more wealth to more people than the modern economy. Okay, the inequity between the rich and the poor is greater, not lesser, or more especially the middle class. So we haven't improved the circumstance, we've made it worse. So again, it's just a lie to sit there and say, oh, the modern economy is some sort of rich, wonderful place where deserve has something to do with it again. No, it doesn't. Having children, I mean, it's an inheritance economy. Let's understand, and that's you can't get more overtly antagonistic towards deserve than inheritance. Ooh, we're at 105 degrees. That's not good. Anyway, so expect failure soon. I have to add a fan, I guess. On the hot days, got no choice. Anyway, or find another video card or whatever. I have to do something about it, I suppose. Having children is good for children, good for you, and good for the world. So, just a baby talk, that is. I mean, obviously it's not good for some of the children. So it's just really stupid to say it's good for the children to be born, with horrible defects. To have heart surgery at 6 months and, to be disabled for the rest of their life because their skull didn't perfectly form or some other kind of crap. No, it's not going to be good for them. That's just complete crap. How the hell it would be good for me? I mean, we're not even on the subject of, again, what you're going to do to your own productivity by having kids. How much of a distraction from your capacity to actually do this, advancing of human civilization. I mean, how much of human civilization has been deterred and is lagging far behind because people who should have devoted more time to their science or their job had to devote a bunch of time to managing their kids. So, kids aren't good for the world. Just nonsense. These quotes from barely noticeable people, sleep is good, death is better, but of course the best thing would have to never been born at all. So again, you can quote lots of people who've said similar things, especially with perspective. That is, after they've lived a while. And, it becomes more and more obvious, I think, as you get older, just what a mess this is and just how sad this game is. Because you really just watch yourself degrade and you watch yourself become more and more vulnerable and weaker. You just basically have to say goodbye to everything. Everything you know dies. Everything you care about. Everything, even the beauty of your own culture, you have to watch it change and become tacky and crass and dirty. I mean, at least you do if you lived my generation. My time on Earth, that's where it went. It went from, where they'd have public service commercials of crying Indians, messages of encouraging people to be better human beings, to just complete glib crap. Not even close to ever saying anything meaningful or deep about your role here as a human being. Just a bunch of happy bullshit about how all manifestations of you know, almost coddling criminals. You know, it's so bad. All right, some conceptions of negative utilitarianism. Oh, okay, that's what he says. No, like a pirate cow. I don't know what the fuck that could be. The philosophy of antinatalism stands on 3 legs. So I guess they're saying a cow with a 1 wooden leg, like Captain Moo. What? See, I'm gapped again. Some conceptions. I mean, it's supposed to be a SpongeBob reference. There's like cows in the ocean, and I don't know, cowfish. I don't know. Some conceptions of negative utilitarianism. So, you know, this is, you're just getting into sort of kind of jargony kind of stuff. Like, this completely defines a philosophical perception. When, you know, I mean, you could call it pessimism, or you could call it lots of things. This idea that risk aversion, you know, that the negative consequences, like dying, driving to the store, that's a pretty heavy negative consequence. And if I just inch up the risk of you dying going to the store, there's a certain point where you're going to say, well, if it's 1 in 100 chance, and I go to the store 568 times a year, gee, there's a pretty good chance I want to die. So yeah, as soon as it inches up a little too high, then you have to take account for it. And so, you know, the utilitarians are just recognizing that the downside risks are, you know, much darker than the brightness, you know, of the upside accomplishments. The view that reducing suffering is the principle, or only thing that matters morally. Well, the argument is that everything that you can do that's good in the world is replacing a bad. Winning the lottery doesn't mean anything to somebody who doesn't need the money, right? If you're a billionaire and you win a $1 million lottery, who cares? You know, well, you know, it just can't mean anything. You know, you're not going to be deliriously happy, and all your problems aren't going to be solved, and no, it's nothing. It's going to have like 0 positive impact. So it's going to mean nothing to you, right? And then it's going to mean everything to somebody who is in the desperate circumstance. So again, it's just really the hunger has to exist first for this to mean anything, and the hunger is, you know, goes from just that idea of being addicted, like I get a feeling that I need to do it, eat, to something more substantial, like you're in chronic pain and you're trying to mitigate against the chronic pain just so you can have a thought in your head that isn't corrupted by anguish, you know. And that moderate pain weighs more than great joy. I don't know, that seems a rather moderate pain. You know, I don't know why he's qualifying the two things. Why not just say that pain weighs more than joy? And that it weighs more for a reason, though, because the joy is really a mitigation against pain. The things your greatest joys in life are gratifications of your greatest deprivations. You know, great loneliness, you know, before love can mean anything. You know, all of that kind of thing. They're deprivation. You have to be thirsty. You have to walk a few miles in the desert to really appreciate a glass of water. The observation that life contains more bad things than good things. So again, I don't know if any negative utilitarian bothers counting. The idea is that the risk is not worth the reward. That you're going to the store and you're buying a device, okay, like, I don't know, a vacuum cleaner, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't suck air very well. It doesn't do a lot of things, and it costs $100. And you're like, why would I buy something that doesn't work very well? I'm going to pay $100 for it? That's just stupid. So yeah, you walk out of the store with nothing because you say, I'd rather have nothing than something that's tainted. So clearly life is tainted. This deserve has nothing to do with it. Things really horrible. This idea of imposing is really horrible. So yeah, it has these liabilities that are just too big. You know, the poison is too much of the pie. You can't, it's just not diluted enough by something of, some value that would neutralize it, some antidote, some accomplishment that has enough real meaning. And the only thing that really would have real meaning, again, the only time it's okay to risk death or to risk mayhem or to risk harm or to risk chaos, is to prevent some greater harm or risk, or suffering. So yeah, you go to war to rescue people, okay, from some worse fate than having to go to war. That's the irony of it, that all the goods are really made out of, rescue missions. And there's just no point to playing a game where that's your victory, is, you prevented the worst outcome. That's not much of a victory. All right, the divide between existing and non-existing agents. So there's no divide. There just happens to be a truth. The future is full of a lot of people. The present's full of a lot, but it's a lot less than the future holds. So obviously there's a truth to this idea that there's all of these things are going to have a welfare, and they're going to have a welfare based on our decisions. And clearly the decisions we make that impact the future are the more important decisions, because there's more agents in that future. So there's lots more welfares to consider in the future. Now, yeah, they don't exist yet, but we know that we are playing with their welfare. We know that there are, dioxin barrels rusting at the bottom of the sea somewhere that are jeopardizing the welfare of the future. There's lots of things we're doing now that will make the future a less habitable, less comfortable, more expensive place to live in. And those are just facts. All right, anyway, and the assertion that the latter, i.e. unborn babies, have only an absolute preference to avoid the risk of any suffering. So this isn't about an individual baby having any kind of preferences. So it's just about the fact that we know statistically that there will be people, okay, who are going to have less bad lives and people who are going to have better lives. And again, you're comfortable with the statistical outcome. You're saying it's okay. I don't mind a few of them dying of stuff, even though you didn't do that. You didn't die of leukemia at 10 years old. But you know it's okay, that you'd do it for the cause. You're sure that you would do it for the cause. If somebody said tomorrow, you're going to be a 10-year-old and spend 2 years dying of leukemia, you would be perfectly comfortable volunteering for the cause. And I think that's bold talk from, just a word jerk, a guy who writes words. Because I don't think he'd put up if that was the real deal. You're gonna be the victim, and you're gonna have to endure the bad and get nothing out of it, and have no reward, and no knowledge of a reward, no experience of happiness in a sense. No, you'll never know what it is to make love or to do this or to do that, and you're just going to die. I don't think you'd volunteer for that, but whatever. And no preference for enjoying anything at all. Okay, so have only an absolute preference to avoid risk of any suffering, and no preference for enjoying anything at all. Well, they're clearly not addicted to anything yet. And they're clearly not afraid of death yet, okay, and they're not a lot of things. So the point is why do you initiate the process of making this machine that will exist in a world where it has these needs? The needs often can't be satisfied without harming something else, that is, stealing the food from something else or making the food out of something else. I mean, really horrible choices. I steal it from them. I prevent them from getting it so I can have it. I offer a higher price. I pay more to take it out of somebody else's mouth. And worse, I finance systems that package other sentient beings, and process them, and through a horrible, worse than any kind of human tragedy ever committed, kind of horrible imposition of years and sometimes of suffering. And clearly, it doesn't really matter for the individual lives, right? It doesn't matter that the calf doesn't live to be 500 years old. The point is we're doing it every day. So the calf, being calf, means this is what you go through. This very short, horrible life of never even seeing the sun, maybe. It's a a mammal born on Earth that never gets to see the sun. I guess bats get by, but you don't want to. You probably don't want to be a bat, huh? Maybe. I'll address these in order. Well, you won't address any of this, obviously. It's just going to be nihilist crapola. Selfish, jackass, idiotic. I don't have to think about any of these subjects. I don't have to take responsibility for my role here, what I'm doing here, what I'm promoting, what I'm causing. Anyway, negative utilitarianism isn't strictly necessary for antinatalist argument. Yes, well, I've sort of pointed out. Not necessary at all, actually. Which is lucky for them because it's a pretty incoherent philosophy. So again, the basic premise is risk aversion, and that's pretty coherent. Okay, recognizing risk and taking responsibility for the parts where it's sort of like just acknowledging if you're a meat eater, and at the same time you acknowledge that dogs and cats have precious consciousness that's worthy of protection and care, and you acknowledge that I don't have any real reason to think pigs don't have exactly the same capacities and needs. They have exactly the same needs, and there's no real rational good reason why I'm eating pigs and I'm letting dogs and cats sit on my couch. And that there's all this hypocrisy in our psychology, and that's that's part of what makes negative utilitarian rational, is the acknowledgement of those realities. And obviously this is a person who's just pretending he doesn't know that they exist, these hypocrisies. However, antinatalists sometimes sneak it in by implication. Well, it's really not getting snuck in when Benatar is the most famous talker on the subject, and his asymmetry is clearly a negative utilitarian argument, just pointing out how depriving somebody of winning the lottery is a lot less of a good. Okay, I mean, in terms of a deprived negative, depriving somebody of something, it's a lot less bad, right? Stopping somebody from winning the lottery than giving somebody cancer. That the goods being denied, whatever they would be, I mean the goods that don't have something to do with fixing a bad, curing a disease, giving somebody an aspirin, the goods that aren't directly related to mitigating against bad are so slight and so vacuous and so where the hell are they, so hard to even see, so transparent. And the negatives, the hard negatives of actually the dying in the chronic pain with the horrible disease and the terrible experiences and the choking and the this and the that, that is so opaque as an experience. So the good is hard to see, the one that isn't made out of fixing a bad, and it's so non-existent. And again, the argument's even more complex in the sense that there is no purgatory for not playing. You're not in some negative state because you didn't play the game. The game is about some kind of gain. You don't lose something because you don't play the game. You know, because you don't invest in getting more doesn't mean you lose what you have. Anyway, however, anti-nihilists sometimes sneak it in by implication. For example, the reader asked me if I'll take 5 minutes of the worst pain imaginable for an hour of the greatest pleasure. And who cares what your answer would be? Frankly, I don't think those kind of thought experiments do much good. Because obviously there's people that make these reckless decisions all the time. You know, they obviously don't, you know, there's people speeding down the street, you know, going 50 miles an hour, you know, down a street with cars on both sides of the street. I mean, they're obviously making such really bad calculations that, you know, what the average person calculates about what that really means, you know, who knows how much thought they can actually, the fact is they really don't even think about it. So, you know, and the worst pain imaginable, how do you even imagine the worst pain imaginable, right? I mean, how do you even go about the process of attempting to imagine these experiences? You know, having your skin peeled off, or, you know, I mean, well, how do I even come up with this scenario that's the worst pain imaginable? It would take time just to even detail, you know, to go through the possibilities of being boiled to death or this or that, you know, all the ways you could be cause this torture, you know, all the possible ways to emphasize and heighten and make perfect the torture. You know, forget it. And why would you even, you know, even doing that would be such an uncomfortable process, you know, that you're paying too much just to answer this question. So forget it. Well, anyway, Benatar presented Harris with a similar trade-off. Would Sam be willing to have children and grandchildren who will lead lives of hardship if that will ensure a bright future for countless descendants after that? So again, this is just the victim thing. Are you willing to go to Disneyland if the price is you have to take one kid who's going to have a terrible experience? He's going to be sick and horribly, it's just going to be awful. And does that taint it for you? Does that make the joy, okay, just really just say, no, it's too high a price, I wouldn't pay the price. I wouldn't do that. And I wouldn't sit there with these straws. Okay, I have 10 straws and I have one short one. Now, I think obviously life has a lot more than one short straw in it. Okay, 1 in 10, it's worse. The statistics for humans is worse than that. And clearly the statistics for animals is a lot worse than that. So you have a lot of short straws. But let's just say you have that one short straw in 10. I would never have any kind of notion of having any ability to sit there and stick that in somebody's pocket and say, tough, I've decided for you, because these 10 other things need to do something totally meaningless that will go absolutely nowhere. Yes, they'll somehow miraculously evade a bad death and disability and all the things that are real in the world. Somehow they'll evade all that. Okay, they'll die instantly in a plane crash, and they'll have this, that, you know, all these. They'll just be lucky as fuck, you know. And even if that was possible to create that scenario, and clearly that's not the scenario you're going to have on Earth, yeah, there's no way I'm sticking that straw in the kid's pocket and saying, you're the loser, ha ha, you have to pay the full price for this nothing. There's absolutely nothing that's going to take place. This meaningless crap where I could just invent it on Mars. Again, I could just say, oh, they're missing Martians. What a tragedy. Bullshit. Nobody's crying. Nobody's upset. Nobody's lamenting the horror. The horror. There's no Martians doing things. You know, eating whatever. You know, I mean, I just... You know, just even thinking of that. I mean, no Martians hunting down, you know, other Martian critters, you know, and making sandwiches out of them. Oh, what a pity. Oh, what a horror. How can we stand it here on Earth if there's no great white sharks, you know, swimming the sand oceans of Mars? Oh, what a tragedy. I mean, it's a pathetic argument. So yes, it's, you know, Benatar's this gets to the, I mean, this gets to many of the arguments, but I mean, the one I would say that I see most overtly in it is the imposition. I mean, it's clearly saying you're going to make a victim, and you're going to tell the victim, you're going to explain to the victim, it's all okay. We're so cool, and we're going to do such cool stuff that your suffering will be well worth it. Okay? It's just so obnoxious for you to say that for him. Because if I was the victim, I'd be saying, fuck you. You know, you're not singing and dancing well enough for me to pay this price. Why the hell would I pay this ticket price? You know, no way you're worth it. Now, if you're going to tell me I'm going to prevent you from having to my hard luck, I'm gonna get you out of the concentration camp. You're gonna throw me in one so I can get you out of one. Well, then you might be making an argument. But if you're gonna just tell me I'm just creating 10 jerks on planet Earth that are gonna live out stupid little selfish nonsense lives doing little robotic bullshit, yeah, screw that. I'm not suffering for that. So no. So again, these arguments, I think, you know, this is just so trivial. Anyway, both questions expect an answer in the negative, and yet my answer to both is that I most certainly would. So he would be perfectly okay injecting one of his kids with cancer. I mean, that's the statistical facts that's going to happen if he had to actually do it, you know, and defend it. And say, yeah, I voted for this, and so because I voted for it, I'm going to sit there. Okay, here you go, Jimmy. Here's your cancer. Here's your pain and suffering, and it's all going to be worth it because your brother's going to have a great time. I think that's pathetic. I can't even imagine how somebody could say, oh yeah, I would take full responsibility for what I'm philosophically defending. That I wouldn't mind having to impose all the negatives on all the victims because it's such a beautiful thing. So it's such a beautiful thing that they're suffering for the glorious nothing. That they're paying this huge price so somebody can babble and, you know, talk and walk and pretend to be somebody. You know, something accomplished. I mean, what a pile of crap. And again, if you made it even clearer that most people are selfish, most people are, you know, they're not invested in any of this crap. They really don't think it would be worth it. And they certainly wouldn't pay this price to create Martian civilization. How many of these people would volunteer to go through chemotherapy to put Martians on Mars? You know, to invent Martians and put them on Mars. How many of these people would do that? You know, with little Martian games. They play silly Martian games, you know. You come up with all kinds of silly shit that they do. You know, the silly clothes that they knit for each other. The whole, you know, make some silly Martian economy. You think these people would volunteer to be injected with cancer, you know, to create the brilliant Martian civilization, you know, of tentacle slime? No fucking way. So they're just so full of shit. So this is all subjective, nepotistic visions of what procreation is. Again, they still haven't gotten out of their little ego traps. All right, regarding the first question, evolution hasn't made great pleasure as accessible to us as it has made pain. The point is that evolution is using only one thing. It's using the whip, all right? It made ouch, and all it does is take away ouch to cause reward. Reward is created by taking the ouch away. Punishment is imposed by giving you the ouch. So, yeah, that's what nature is actually doing. And you know, the rewards are illusions. They're delusions. But you know, the very fact that he says the word evolution, you know, and doesn't acknowledge all that evolution entails, which is the whole plan is to make a whole bunch of failures. So one or two winners, you know, out of 100 can pretend they won something. And they get to be killed too. They're going to be stabbed to death in the end anyway. So they're going to fail in the end. They will fail to persevere. And that's just a fact. And so the whole thing is quite insidious, to make all of these little competing things when you know you're going to annihilate most of them. Most of them will be in children being annihilated. So he doesn't even take the word evolution at all seriously. Fitness advantage from good things. Fitness advantages from things like a good meal, accumulate slowly, but a single injury can drop one's fitness to zero. Yeah, and that's part of the sloppy inefficiency of evolution. There was all kinds of brilliant evolution that took place, great little modifications, and they got wiped out by a hurricane, or they got wiped out by some stupid incident. So there was like a bigger brained human, or there was some better human, and it was starting to take over. It was succeeding, and then it failed for a dopey reason, because of an earthquake or some other thing, and they all fell off a cliff. I mean, evolution has no brain. It isn't doing this in some sort of efficient manner. It's this horrible, inefficient process of it's a really badly organized gladiator war. So the gladiators aren't getting better and better, and they're just modifying each other to the circumstance. I've made this metaphor so many times, but the wars take place between the gladiators, and then the gladiators get bigger and bigger, taller and taller, and then it becomes a huge disadvantage, because then little midget gladiators can knock them down, because they go to reach down to get them and they can't catch them, and the little midgets start winning, right? And so then it switches, and it just keeps doing this yin-yang switching back and forth between advantages and disadvantages of weight and height and size and speed, and it's just it's not going anywhere. You never make your perfect gladiator. And if you do, what is it going to look like? A crocodile. Some kind of simple, durable refinement. Just some sort of really efficient GI tract, so you don't need to eat very often, and you get every bit of nutrient out of the food, and, you just have all the perfect little weapons, and you're quite durable and quite just insidious in terms of being the perfect monster, and that ends up being the perfect gladiator, is the perfect monster. Anyway, so, and then, to even talk about humans, we're not even evolving anymore because we're not playing by those rules. Our people don't procreate based on being winners. They procreate even if they have cancer, and even if they have all kinds of genetic failures, even if they're going to drop dead at 45. I mean, there's lots of people, people have kids and they have no real hope because genetically they're doomed to die young. Because that's how it worked for their ancestors. Their ancestors all had kids young. They all lived to have their kids and support their kids, and then they dropped dead, soon after. And so, they have a genetic code that's only going to make them capable of living 50 years, and that's it. Is that clever? I don't think so. No retirement, none of that. Anyway, but a single injury can drop one's fitness to zero. So here I could just make the argument. So you're conceding that deserve has little to do with it, and yet you're saying it's a good game. Play it some more. So the pain of an injury is felt stronger than the joy of pizza. So again, that's such a glib little trivial way of describing the price you're paying for this silly adventure. But even pizza, though quite an achievement, is far from the greatest pleasure imaginable. I don't know. If I was hungry, pizza sounds pretty good. I'm just saying this, I don't know what this greatest pleasure imaginable thing again, so what are we talking about? Something as crass as like an orgasm or something? And we know that lasts, 43 seconds. I mean, I don't mean to diminish it. I don't want to trivialize. Oh, yes, there are some pleasures that are very pleasurable. There are some, ooh, that felt good. A sneeze. It's kind of a nice feeling, but come on. You're going to pay cancer prices for it? I mean, it's crazy. What you're buying at the store is so overpriced, so insanely overpriced, and to suggest people should keep doing this, keep buying this bad deal, it's really disgusting. Yeah. Maybe take a little break, and I'm already probably somewhere around an hour, so that might be enough, but we'll do a little bit more. It's all this, it's just glib. Like I said, the key concept was the fact that he brought up the economy and how it needs people to, grind into the dirt. It's that kind of nihilist, silly philosophy where I really don't care what the real price is. I'll just pretend this is accomplishing something when all it's accomplishing is torture, fundamentally. And you're buying trivial notions of accomplishment, happily ever after endings to the stories that aren't real, that never took place, that will never happen that way. It was just a big trial and tribulation, and you have only temporary victories. Your victories only get, they only last this little bit of time. And then you're in the loser category again. Yuck. Alright, should be back. So let's finish up with a paragraph more or so. Anyway, so this is just such a funny first sentence. Humankind has only recently begun exploring the landscape of bliss compared to our long evolutionary history of pain. It's hilarious, right? I mean, people don't look very blissful to me, frankly. I'm not seeing it. And so where is this cell of religious devotees to, blisserism? Where are the blisserites? Where can I go find these people living the bliss, living bliss life? I mean, it would just be a nice thing for him to give me an example of the human being who's living in this, who's exploring the bliss landscape. Who is it, the heroin addict? Who are you talking about? Anyway, if you can't imagine a pleasure great enough to make the trade-off worthwhile, and again, that isn't even saying, that isn't even making the question reasonable. The trade-off is you have to do all this murder and slaughter, to have your bliss. Okay, and are you willing to do that? Are you willing to do what it takes? And obviously, we're all willing to do it when we don't have to do it, right? When we're not the ones in the war, when we're not the ones that are going to pay the high price, when we're not the ones that are going to be unlucky. Then it's really easy to pay the price because we're not paying it. So let's just recognize that this whole conversation is just about some of us, even though we're, cheaters and cowards, have at least the integrity to say, I know I'm cheating. I know that whatever I'm gaining out of my life, I'm gaining it just out of good fortune. That's it. All right. Luck. Okay. A pleasure great enough to make the trade-off worthwhile. Consider that you may be falling prey to the availability of heuristic. I don't even know what that could mean. Consider that you may be falling prey to the availability of heuristic. So I don't know whether he's saying your ego. I don't know. Pain is a lot more painful and salient, but it is not a lot more important. So he's conceding the point that the pain is more real, in a sense, but he's saying that somehow the pleasure is more important. And it just, for why is it more important? Because again, what are the pleasures usually made out of? Is escaping the pain. It's not you don't go to an actual good place. You just get out of a bad place. Fixing problems, fixing things that shouldn't exist in the first place is what most of our goods are. Our good experiences are fixing something that shouldn't have been broken. The fact that pleasure is rare should only make it more valuable when offsetting pain. So again, just bizarre that the fact that I'm getting very little of it is somehow a good thing. It makes it a better deal that I'm getting less of it. So I'm here, I'm spending all of this money to buy this thing, and he's saying somehow the less of it I get, this thing I'm buying, the more I should appreciate paying way too much for it. I mean, somehow the price somehow it becomes a better deal and I'm getting less. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. I mean, if it was fertilizer, how does it make sense? I'm paying for it and I'm getting less of it, and somehow getting a worse deal should make me feel even better about it. It makes me feel even worse about it. And an hour is a lot longer than 5 minutes. So I guess he's going back to the thought experiment of, the fact that you're sitting in some sort of bliss for 45 minutes, you're willing to pay for it. Like somehow you should have to pay for it. No, that should be free. It shouldn't cost anything at all. Why bother with the 5 minutes of torture? But the reality is that's the real price that's going to be paid on planet Earth. So again, this isn't even a fair analogy to the reality on Earth, right? Because we know that most of people's lives isn't the worst pain and it isn't the greatest pleasure. So that isn't where you exist most of the time. So again, it doesn't really get to anything. And certainly all of those moments are just neutral. If I was able to extract all the bits of my life that I thought were unnecessary, in the sense that I didn't feel well enough or I didn't feel good enough, they were more unpleasant or uncomfortable than they were comfortable, there's not going to be much of my life left. Because frankly, all of that tedium is that. It's tedium. It's irritating. It's nuisance. As for the question about children and distant descendants, answering it negatively seems to me rather selfish. So this whole idea of trying to make it selfish to not impose cancer on children. It's so selfish of you not to impose cancer. Should my goal be to avoid only that suffering which I can be blamed for and have to deal with? So again, this idea of what you're blamable for is every single thing you advocate. So if you vote for it, you're blamable. Just a fact. You don't have to be again, if you buy the meat at the store, you're blamable. You're paying the guy who killed it. As a parent, I'm going to spend countless hours ensuring a better life for my children. I think the hours won't be countless, frankly. I think the amount of time you will actually spend in your life contemplating the welfare of your children will be minimal. And most of it will just be obligatory. You'll do the obligatory minimum. You won't compromise your affairs. You won't compromise the personal agenda very much for the obligation. And again, it'll just be up to some social obligation. You'll fulfill your social obligation so people can't ridicule you. But you'll do nothing more than that. And you'll certainly not do any training of your children. Like most pet owners, you won't spend much time doing the work of training your dog to be a citizen. You'll just do the happy, fun stuff. You'll play ball and you'll do little, stuff that makes you laugh. But you're not going to do the stuff that's unpleasant. And with kids it's even worse because there's a whole bunch of unpleasantness they need if they're going to have any character. To make your kid a good human being, you're probably going to have to make your kid cry. And that's just a fact. And you're all comfortable with that crap because you're not going to do it. Because you're not going to know that the real agenda is you're making a human being, and you need to make your human being into something socially useful and productive. And you're not going to get that result the fun way. It's not going to be fun. While probably doing little to directly impact the far future. So again, everything, you don't know what your impact is, and that's the whole problem. Deserve, again, has nothing to do with it. You can't plan it, you can't force it, you can't guarantee it, you can't do any of that crap, and that's what makes it failure as a game. No intelligent being, volunteers to play chaos. It's obnoxious to intelligence. Only stupid people can enjoy life, because life has way too many risks in it, way too many ways to fail, way too many ways to miss the ball, not kick it right. Do everything playing the replay would just annoy the hell out of you, because you'd just be constantly saying, I could have done that better, if I would have said those words better, I should have said something to him, I should have done this, I should have done. It's just a constant editing and saying, shit, I missed it again, I missed that opportunity, I missed that opportunity, I missed this opportunity, I missed that one. I mean, what intelligence would want that as their forever legacy? Go to a heaven where that's where you do all day, is just look at all the ways you fucked it up by some stupid reason. Oh gee, I just squandered so much, I squandered so much there, I bet on the wrong horse there, there were so many things I could have done better, I should have done better, 5 more minutes of thought, 10 seconds more of thought, this much this. I mean, what intelligence wants to play chaos where, the outcomes are never going to be consistent with your intentions, never going to be consistent with what you write on the paper, the plan, the blueprint. Never will the instructions on the box have a damn thing to do with what the robot will end up doing in the world. You'll be Dr. Frankenstein. You'll end up with just a goddamn mess every time. And then you'll have to clean it up. That's all you can get out of this slop, this procreative bullshit. On a personal level, it will fail to make you a better person. And there's every risk that you're just going to create people who will hurt each other in the future. You're just creating gladiators with knives in each other's throats. That's your grand success. And it sucks as a definition of what you squandered your brain supporting and defending. A stupid bug fight. Anyway. So life is a net negative. So again, it's the game of life, okay? Is failure. Okay, that's what it makes more than anything else. It makes more failure than anything else. That's its biggest produced product. That's its biggest seller, is failure. Alright, anyway. So enough. Till the next time and such. Maybe we'll explore the comments. I don't know. I mean, it's all these people just doing all their philosophy crap, and it's just it's veiling this all in something a lot more complicated than it is. In terms of, we understand our subject of addictions, we understand we're addicted to a narrative, we're doing something and it seems important, but we know if somebody else was doing it, it would look trivial and stupid. And that fact should just scream out to you. The fact that you are not crying for all the Uranians who don't exist. Uranians, the Saturnites, they don't exist, and you're not upset at all. You don't miss them. You're not thinking, oh, what a terrible missed opportunity. They could be going to the store and doing all this fun stuff and having body odor and all that crap, going poos. I mean, just there's no way you're lamenting it as some kind of negative. So just realize that that's exactly what you're doing now here. That if there were Saturnites, they would be looking at you and going, oh, fuck, what a waste of complexity. What a mess that place is, Earth. And you know it. Anyway. Well, you know it if you thought about it. And the fact is, you don't really think about any of this shit because your little gears are turning in such silly, trivial, crass, crappy, shitty ways. You're just trying to get to the neighbor's underwear drawer. I mean, you're so pathetic, talking that you have any of these big ambitions for your brain when your brain is preoccupied by little trivial schemes. Ugh. It's just so bad. It's so insincere. It's such horseshit. It's just babbling social memes. You know. Yuck. Anyway. So that is, I think, enough of a video. So till the next time and such. I'll sew this together and it should be acceptable. So, see ya. Next time, probably. Maybe, hopefully. Yeah. Again, we can't be, none of it. Can't be sure about a damn thing. Alright, anyway. And yet, people are selling that game. High risk. Yeah. Buy it. No, I don't think I will. Alright, anyway. Till the next time and such.